Hello, everybody. My name is Patrick Irby, and I'm with Alachua County Public Works. I'm our Waste Alternatives Manager, but formerly our Recycling Program Supervisor. And I'm kind of going to stray off of my presentation a good bit. Many of the things I was going to talk about, we've already kind of touched on. I don't want to bore everybody by saying the same thing second or third time. So I'll breeze through some of the slides and then focus on some other spots which I think are very important and haven't been focused on here today. Since we're going to be kind of free-flowing with it anyway, if you got questions, raise your hand. For why focus on businesses, I call this why you picking on me. We are picking on businesses, and we understand that. We know it. We're not going to lie about it. As people have mentioned, the portion of the commercial waste stream, or of the overall waste stream that comes from commercial sector is tremendous. I pulled out the Alachua County numbers, and almost 70% of our waste in 2013 was commercial. We had a good amount of construction, so C&D's in there. So 70% of our waste stream was commercial. And we put, for years and years and years, tons of our education and outreach at the money that my office has, which we get through an assessment, almost all of it is being spent on residential education. Going to schools, talking to kids, going to festivals, talking to families, things along those lines. So you start looking at the fact that the vast majority of your waste stream has nothing to do with the people you're talking to. It seems like a misappropriation of your funds. So in order to better utilize our resources, we've taken a turn and gone more towards the commercial side. We've really stepped up our commercial enforcement. We are one of those communities with a mandatory ordinance, and I'll focus more on that as a part of this presentation. And again, why it's important for that large portion of our waste stream coming from commercial. You look at things businesses are producing. For offices, it's paper, cardboard, a little bit of cans and bottles from a lunchroom, but a lot of easily recyclable materials. Manufacturing, you have large portions of metal, again, cardboard, pallets, things which there's almost always a market for in a community. Multifamily housing, I don't think there's a community in Florida that has multifamily housing taken care of yet. That's a huge problem area for us. And again, it's another really large portion of the waste stream, especially in Alachua County. We have the University of Florida, Santa Fe College. Being college towns, we have thousands of apartment units, and we're failing them at the moment, but we're working on it. We're having meetings constantly, working with the apartment associations, really trying to get as much input as we can from the people who are actually with the residents and working with them to improve that. But the real reason we pick on you, it's so easy to regulate businesses over households. If you start talking about creating a mandatory ordinance for people to recycle at their homes, you're going to have every one of your commissioners get thrown off. There's going to be revolutions. People will get fired up. But you start talking about, oh, we're just going to go to these the businesses, and they make up 2/3 of our waste stream, and just tell them to recycle some paper, things like that. No one's going to show up at a commission meeting and start crying about it. So it's the political will. In the past, there wasn't a lot of it. But I see continually, every year, more and more communities are picking up mandatory ordinances. There's not a lot of kickback from any of the places I've seen put into implementation. They're going in, they're working. Depending on the community, some of them are very strict, some of them very lenient. Some require just recycle your cardboard. That's the ordinance. Pretty easy. No one's going to show up to a commission and start screaming and hollering. So it makes it easy. So that's why we pick on businesses. You make a lot of garbage, and a lot of it we can recycle, and no one gets mad when we tell you what to do. So it works out. The ordinances is kind of one of the spots I think we haven't really talked about today, at least. And I think that's a spot where I could focus on to kind of help the local governments that are in the room. I've talked with a number of communities that are trying to build an ordinance, some that have an ordinance and are trying to improve it. And I think a lot of people really get bogged down in the details. And creating an ordinance, especially a first go at an ordinance, is very simple, and there's really 4 or 5 different spots you need to look at. And as long as you touch on this, usually you can get it by your commission and get it implemented, and pretty relatively soon get something out there to help improve your recycling. And the first thing is the same thing I'd do if I was a business looking to start a recycling program. You look at what you have in your waste stream. So waste composition studies are one of the most valuable things a community can do. We did one, I think it was 2010. We did a waste composition study. We try to do one every 10 years just to see where we're going, what changes we've had in our waste stream. So easy way of doing that, we have a tipping floor rather than a landfill. We ship all of our stuff to another county, let them handle it, but we've got a tipping floor. So we brought, for about 2 weeks, loads of commercial, residential, multifamily loads of garbage, pushed them off to the side of our tipping floor, and we had University of Florida students, their environmental engineering class, sort everything by hand. They separated it into about 70 different categories. It was very detailed, very in-depth, and at the end of it, they gave us like a 90-page report of what we have. And I see some people, it was not pretty. I think everyone got stomach bugs, but it was worth it. We got some good data. And it's, like I said, a great first step, because the information you glean from that study is what you can bring to your commission when you tell them this is what we need and why. If you tell them that I drove around and I saw a lot of cardboard in a dumpster, we should make an ordinance. Just like Miriam was saying with, you have to have the data to back it up, they'll look at you and be like, okay, but if you tell them we have 150,000 tons of commercial waste a year, and of that, 50,000 of it's cardboard. Say, we can easily get this pulled out with an ordinance requiring businesses to separate this out. All of a sudden, that becomes a very simple thing. They look and say, this would be 10, 15% added to our recycling rate, get us closer to 75%. All of a sudden, it becomes a very sellable idea. So you have to have that data to back up what you're trying to do. And the easiest way to do it is a very dirty process of a waste composition study. But like I said, you do it once every 10 years. By the time you do it the next time, people have forgotten how bad it was, and you can trick them into it again. So you know what you've got in your waste stream. So the next step would be kind of deciding who those materials are coming from. So who do you want to enforce? Who do you want this ordinance to target? So in Alachua County, we've actually broadened ours considerably to now, if you are a commercial entity, it applies to you. We have no more de minimis. We have no more exemptions. If you are a business under this size, if you only have 10 employees, you're exempt. Don't have that. If you are a not-for-profit, not exempt anymore. If you are this or that. If you have a commercial dumpster, this applies to you, as long as you're in our jurisdiction. So figure out who you want to enforce. Write down the materials that you found in your waste composition study that you want to be your designated commodities, because you have to tell them what you want them to recycle as well. In ours, we've got 8 commodities that we list, and it's the standards that you find in any recycle bin: the cardboard, newspaper, office paper, cereal boxes, plastic, glass, metal, steel, all that. Just the basic items. And many communities will tell you pick 3. The 3 largest commodities out of this list. Pick those, pull them out of your waste stream, you're good to go. We also did away with that. So if you produce it, you recycle it. That's the way we view it. We have no more de minimis at all, anywhere in our ordinance. Henry over there, my cohort, he's our enforcer. So last year he did about 1,200 commercial visits where he went to the businesses, and you have to have someone who will follow up on your ordinance, otherwise it doesn't matter. So he goes, talks to the people, looks in the garbage can. If he sees a bunch of cardboard or office paper in there, doesn't matter if you got collection, you're still in violation. Just having a bin there doesn't make you compliant. You got to be actually doing the work. So that's important to have someone going around and following up on your ordinances. So I made notes while I was sitting there, so this is all a new presentation. So you've outlined the commodities you're going to target, decide who you're going to focus your ordinance on. You got to create your rules. And like I said, we did away with most of the exemptions and all, but many communities still do that because it helps get it through a commission. That way you don't feel like you're picking on the mom and pops and all those people, because that will give you a pretty negative impression, and it can bog down the process and get your ordinance denied. So definitely know your commission, who you're talking to. And then you also got to determine who's going to enforce it. We handled that pretty easy. Being the Waste Management Division, we enforce our own. So we hired a code enforcement officer. That way we don't have to deal with another department. They don't have multiple duties. He doesn't have to go out and check new construction as well for plumbing. He gets to specify or specifically focus on our ordinance, knows it backwards and forwards, and that's all he has to deal with. So that's definitely a luxury for us. I was glad that we could get that position created for us, because up until 2007, we did not have that position, but we'd had an ordinance for 6 years prior to that with no enforcement, because no other organization in our county government was willing to do it for us. So that's worked out well. And then, as Miriam pointed out, you gotta have penalties to follow it up as well. So there's got to be a little bit of a stick at the end. Otherwise, most people won't do it just because it looks good when someone comes into your office to have a recycle bin sitting out there. So we follow the state statutes. I think it's 162 outlines code enforcement, and that sets, I think it's $125 a day that we can fine a person for not recycling. I've never had to do that because we focus more on education, which I think is another point that a lot of organizations miss. They get their ordinance in place, they hire former police officers, and they go out and they write tickets. They send out citations, they take them to a magistrate, however the community decides to handle it. And being the office that I'm in, like I said, we used to just go to schools and talk to kids. We would go to festivals and talk to families. That's what we know how to do, so we hired someone who we know could go and talk to folks as an educator, not as an enforcement person, because it's a lot easier to gain compliance through goodwill than to just sit there and yell at somebody and tell them how bad they are. That's how you get someone to begrudgingly do it, and that's when people do the minimum. So there's a big difference between someone being compliant with your ordinance and someone being a community partner with your organization. And that's something a lot of folks miss when they're making these ordinances. And when you've got one of the business reward programs where you recognize folks at a commission meeting or take an ad out once a year in the newspaper and say, these are our star recycling businesses in the community, the people you're going to talk about aren't the ones who are doing the bare minimum just to follow the rule. They're going to be the ones who go above and beyond because they believe in what you've taught them, they believe it inside themselves, and you get that buy-in, and it really feeds down through the employees, and it works out really well. So we've not had to take anyone to the code board yet. We haven't had anyone really have any backlash. No one's going to the commission talking about how the evil Waste Management Division is coming and finding his business and putting him and his family out. We haven't had anything like that because we go with the right approach. So that's something to remember as well. And then again, tracking. Tracking who you visited, what they recycled, how much they didn't recycle. That's the stuff that you have to know. That way you know who to go back and talk to again. And also when you go to your commission, like if I had to go to our commission right now and talk about our ordinance, it'd sound pretty bad because we only have about 35% compliance. But that's because our ordinance, it's extremely broad in what people have to do. There's not a lot of ways for people to get away from being compliant without recycling everything. So though our compliance is fairly low, the people who have instituted a recycling program is about 70%. which is very good. So by tracking what people are recycling, we were able to talk about that, and it didn't get me fired by sounding like a non-performer, because I could tell them these were the folks who last year had no program and now have something in place, though it's not fully up to the ordinance. It's still a step in the right direction. So as long as people are working with us, we're happy, our commission's happy, we get to continue working and keep our jobs. So that's a bonus for everyone. And for the businesses who are in the room, if your community does not have an ordinance at the moment, the best way to prevent one from being created, as everyone is trying to get to 75% recycling, and you are the guys we're picking on, the best thing you can do is go to your Chamber of Commerce, the business association you belong to, whether it's apartment complexes or whatever, and kind of take it upon yourselves to institute at least a rudimentary program where you are ahead of the county or your local municipality, so that they can't come and pick on you and say, you guys aren't doing anything, we need you guys. This way you beat them to the punch. And then you guys look like the all-stars, and we don't have to do anything. It's great. It works out for everybody. All right. So building a program, this one's been touched on a couple times. So again, I'll just breeze through a couple slides and then pick a spot or two to focus on. All right. First steps. I kind of have a different view on how to build your program. Gene, he had the 10 steps for setting up a program. And really, I focus on 3. And it's check your local ordinances, because I went through business school, I did all that, and I know #1 priority is make sure you're not violating any laws. So check your ordinances. If you've got one, that'll give you a good guide on what you need to get in terms of building a program. And then analyze your waste stream, waste audit. There's several different types of waste audits you can do as a business. And this is the other spot where I think I could kind of focus in on and give some new information for folks. You can get really in-depth, or you can get very surface view on what a business is producing and where you need to focus your attentions. And this is as a manager, office coordinator, whatever position would be doing this at your business. And again, a waste composition study is the best you can do. And for that, you would go through one night or every night for a week. Each bag of garbage that you pull out, take a piece of duct tape or something, put it on the bag, write down where it came from, put it in a corner. Collect it all, go get your group of people the next morning, rip them all open, of course, by knowing where they came from, and then sort through it, sees what's getting thrown away in what part of your business. So you might find out that in your accounting division, nobody's recycling paper, but over in, I don't know, your reception area, they're doing a great job of paper recycling. They don't need any bins over there. So it'll help you decide kind of how to utilize your resources the best that you can. Another simple way of doing it is just a simple walkthrough analysis. And for businesses that aren't too keen on us coming in and working with them, this is really the gentlest approach that you can take. And basically just say, show me your waste generating activities and what you do with it. So you walk in and be like, here's where we do such and such activity. Those are our garbage bins. And you look in the bin, say, okay, and you walk on. Take notes the whole time. And then afterwards, you can give a little bit. It won't be as detailed as if you did a full waste comp study, but it'll be better information than just going with a approach, like a one-size-fits-all approach of every garbage bin needs a recycle bin. Though I think that's a great approach, and that's what I try to do at our office. You may not need that. It just kind of depends on your individual organization and the people you have working for you, because sometimes you'll have an organization, you've got people on board already who have no problem collecting at their desk, taking it home, dealing with it that way. And if you've got that, then you're golden. But then you've got other folks who will actively resist any attempt to recycle. And that's when it gets a little bit tricky. And then I think identifying your local resources, it was kind of mentioned earlier, but each county has a recycling program coordinator. And that individual's job should include working with local businesses to increase recycling. So this person, if you call them up, will be more than happy, 9 times out of 10, to come to your business and do a walkthrough and offer you advice, give you tips on contract negotiations, things to look for, traps you might fall into, check with other local businesses, the people next door to you. Chances are they might have some bins. You might be able to split service, save some money that way. And they might also have some tips on what works and what doesn't work in your community. Talk to your local haulers. Find out what kind of programs they offer. Is it single stream? Is it dual stream? Is it all in one bin and then it gets sorted out somewhere or burned? Finding out what types of opportunities exist in your community will help determine what you want to do inside your own business. And then don't forget reuse. In Alachua County, we've got a thing called Tools for Schools. And we get a lot of leftover items or misprints, things like that from local businesses that we give right back to school teachers. So we had one year, we had like 10,000 pencils that were cut a 1/4 inch too short. And they were supposed to be a donation or a giveaway item for a business. They didn't want them anymore, so they were just going to throw them away. So instead, they brought them over to Tools for Schools. We give them back to school teachers for free, and everybody wins that way. And then you look like a good guy, because then you get some positive press out of that, and then it doesn't end up in the waste stream, so my office is happy. But a lot of the larger communities will have options like that, or Habitat for Humanity, Salvation Army, places like this. Office furniture, anything like that, old printers, desk organizers, things that are bulky, take up a lot of room in the landfill or your dumpster. There's oftentimes an easy way to get rid of those without actually throwing them away. And then we've talked about program design a number of times, but I think don't skimp out on the educating portion. Educating your employees about what the program is, why you're doing it, if you're doing it for your own internal reasons. If you're just saying we're doing this so that the county doesn't fine us, that's not going to go very far. But tell them why recycling is a positive for you, for the business, for the community. Tell them where the bins are. Tell them what materials go in them. Just really get the buy-in from management down and emphasize repeatedly that this is an important thing. It's a priority for the organization, priority for the states, and continually hammer that home. And when it comes to the placement of your bins, signage, you can't say it enough. Good signage gets good results. Have pictures, have words, have colors, anything to draw the eye and leave the guessing game out of it. There's nothing worse than setting out a bin and having both of them turn into garbage, because that is extremely inefficient, and we see it all the time. And then goal setting, and then reporting it back to your employees, always important. And don't be afraid to, I skipped to that. Don't be afraid to go back and revise your program after it's been in place for a little bit. I like to have once a year, I try to have our folks go out, because I am in charge of recycling at all of our county offices as well. So I go out, see where the bins are, talk to folks, see if they're getting used, see if I can remove any, if I need to add any, if there's materials we aren't collecting, because most of our offices only have paper. So they got paper bins everywhere. I didn't know they had a kitchen. So we've been missing out in cans and bottles and stuff for years. So just a little bit of communication can really help improve a program. And that goes for the ordinance portion from my earlier talk. About every 5 years at the minimum, go back and see what's working, see what's not. Our most recent revision, we went back and focused solely on multifamily housing, because we were missing them. The way it was written, and we didn't realize it, you could have a single 18-gallon bin for an apartment complex with 200-something units, and you'd be compliant. And that's not even close to helping anyone. So go check with your inspector, check with your businesses, check with anyone who would be involved in the process, see what's working, see what's not, work to fix it, and find that balance between the convenience and the costliness. Because it'd be super easy to hire some minimum wage guy to stand next to every single desk and hold out their hand and say, is that paper? I'll take it. And then run it to a recycle bin. No one would ever not recycle. It'd be so easy, but it'd cost you a fortune. So it's deciding your priorities, deciding what you have as your resources, and finding that balance and just creating the most efficient system that you have possible, and working as best you can to help us meet the state mandates. Any questions? Nothing. Okay. Oh, we got one.
Do you supply the inside containers?
He asked if we have our own containers. For our county offices, we do, but for the general business population, we have a number of local haulers, and it's almost always included in the service they provide.
Any other questions, Patrick? Not. Let's give him a great round of applause.